Howdy everyone, Matt here. I got a question for you. Are you curious about what the motions are that we come up with as delegates? What do they mean? What do they do? I want to talk about that today. Well, second of all, let me say thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into the video. Thank you for the likes, the comments, and subscribing to the channel. And if you do feel so inclined, please hit that subscription button. It won't cost you a copay or anything. And if you enjoy the video, hit that thumbs up. It helps me out so much. And of course, most importantly of all, let me know your thoughts, opinions, beliefs, any of that. Let's get a discussion going, and hopefully we can walk away with a better understanding of things. So I thought I would talk a little bit more about the motions. Now, last time I talked about the House of Delegates, so what we do there, but I figured I would get a little bit more into the motions that we come up with. Because last year I was able to get a motion through the House of Delegates. So the motions overall, there are several things. One, they can be bylaw changes. So how like the APTA governs itself or does something. It can be a vision. It could be something that we're going to work towards. It can be say, hey, we're going to support this or that. And because things change over time. And I would say one thing that has come out of this past house was AI. So artificial intelligence. So that wasn't something that was around 20 years ago in healthcare. It wasn't really a thought. So as this stuff comes out, yes, we have to change. We have to come up with something on how is this going to control or what we want to do with it in the field of physical therapy. But I want to talk about the motion that I wrote up about why I came up with it, the process of it. So if you're curious about how to actually get one written up, and then why I did it. So at last year's House, the 2023 House of Delegates, I presented RC 2123. And that is an adoption so that the APTA would adopt pay transparency by employers of physical therapists and physical therapist assistants on that. And this came about through a discussion at the 2022 House about, I believe it was pay equality, or I believe that. And it was a discussion. I don't remember the exact motion. Forgive me for that. But it kept going back and forth over some terminology. So it was really going back and forth over, is it equity or equality? And those are two separate terms. And some people say, well, no, it needs to be equity. No, it needs to be equality. And it's like, well, that includes this. Well, what about and or? It's going back. Now, you may think that's kind of a silly thing, but really when it comes down to rules and laws and, any of this stuff, you do need to be as, specific as you can with language, because you don't want language that at times it's too broad, because then it can be really interpreted as something. You don't want something that's, maybe too focused on it, because then you exclude other things. You don't want something that's very, very passive or very weak. So you do have to get very specific with language on it. During the debate part of the House with that, there was people with different points of views. Nothing of it was very negative. So it was just mainly like wanting to get the language correct on it. And it just got tabled. It just got set aside saying, we're just going to withdraw this because it just wasn't a big agreement on the language, which is not a bad thing, because if it just gets set aside, it's like, hey, we're going to come back. We're going to take those points of view and we're going to strengthen it up. We're going to listen to this on it. So keep that in mind. It's nothing bad. But out of that, I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? If we really want to work on pay equality, that everyone gets paid a fair wage for the work that they do, what if everyone just knew what everyone else got paid on it? That was my thought sitting there. And we had a meeting afterwards, our delegation, after the House, that we come together. What did you like? What did you not like? What are some possible motions that you would want to come up with? And I presented that. I said, what if we just, this thing of pay transparency, and I'd heard about it. And I said, what if we brought that up? If everybody knew what everyone got paid, then, the thing is that then you would know what's fair. And my undergraduate is in business, And one thing that we did talk about with the HR stuff is about, with pay. And then employers, they'll tell you can't discuss pay with your other, but really the biggest reason why employers don't want you to discuss pay is that they'll say that you're going to be mad at that you're going to be upset with your coworkers, but really they don't want you upset at them. Because think about it. If you worked for a clinic for 5 years, let's say, and you make $85,000, and they hire a new grad that's just been just came out of school for $80,000, who are you going to be mad at? You're going to be mad at the new grad, maybe a little resentful, but you're going to be mad at the employer. Why are you paying this person this amount of money when you're paying me, this amount on it? So that's really kind of one of the reasons why employers don't want you to talk about it. So I said, well, to really strengthen the employees, this therapist, if we just all knew about that. So they said, all right, Matt, that's a good idea. Research it and come back and let's talk about it. So I got into researching pay transparency, and I did find out quite a bit of stuff about it, which I will talk a little bit about that right now. Now, it has been adopted in several countries in Europe. So there's a lot of information has come out from there. So when writing this up, research is a component to it. You want to show about, positive changes or things like that. So it's also been something that has come forth in the United States. So several states have passed laws about it. No, I'm sorry. I did not say what it was. So what it is that the employer has to disclose the information about the compensation, so the wages or whatever, internally. So if you're an employee of a company, that they would have to give that to you if you request it. If you're an external candidate, so if you're applying for a job, they either have to have it posted, or if you ask for the range, they have to give it to you, or there can be a combination of both of that. So this has been passed in the United States, in several states. So like Colorado, California, New York, Washington, they have some. And there's several states. There's also some cities that have passed it and counties that have passed it. So it's something I saw, hey, this is coming out. This is something that's coming down the line, and it's looking like it's going to be in more and more places. So I looked at that to say, all right, this is something that, again, like I said, is coming down the line, and let's just be on the forefront of this on it to say, let's support this, and let's be a part of this as it comes down the line. So a component of understanding of writing this up, so now we're going to get into the writing it up, is what is the APTA's role with this? Now, with pay transparency, this is a law that is passed. This is a law that's been passed in these cities, counties, and states. So it's a law. The APTA has no governance over it. So the APTA cannot force an employer in a state that does not have a pay transparency law to say, you have to do that on it, that you have to. So if a hospital or a PT clinic says, we don't want to do it, and it's not required in our state or our city or our county, we don't have to do it. So this became a support statement on it, which is something we can do, saying like, hey, the APTA supports that for employers of physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. So just showing like, hey, we're on your side. So that's what started with it, and I wrote this all up. So it does have a component in there. So we write up what the title is, and there's a support statement for it. And pretty much it's just saying that it just supports the pay societal issues, so like pay inequality on it, that there is a pay inequality, and it allows PTs and PTAs to be paid fairly for their work. So again, this is to help with sustain the profession. That's what I wrote up on it. So that to ensure that people, that you're being paid fair for what you do. So I wrote that up. And it goes to a committee. So there's a small committee of it. So we write. I take this to the chief delegate, and we kind of have someone who assists, and they kind of help with the wordage on it, the verbiage on it, because you want to make sure that this is, again, a strong statement. You don't want stuff that's real passive. Again, you don't want something that's too broad. You don't want something that's too narrow. So you have to get the wordage just right. And so we have some people in the delegation, and some other people helped out. And then it goes to the reference committee. And they're the ones who read through this and say, yes, this is something that we will take to the House, or no. So this made it through. It made it through. And they said, yes, we're going to have this as a motion for 2023. After that, it gets put into the slate of all the motions that have come up. There was, I believe, like 25 or 20 something of them at one point. And they get published on the hub. It's out of the community on the APTA website. So on there, it allows everyone who is a member and all that to see it and discuss it and talk about it. This is important because you can start answering questions on it. So does somebody, I see this, what does it mean? What is this going to cover? And it can help us reword language on it, because, okay, maybe I do see like that's not as inclusive as I thought it was going to be. Or like, oh, you know what? I missed out on an area of something. And so that's what it ended up. And I really didn't get a lot of discussion on it. I think the biggest thing that people were wondering, it's like, so do I have to do this, or everyone going to have to do it? And the point was like, no, you don't, unless it is something that's required in your state, your city, or your county. That was the biggest thing that came out of the discussion on the hub. Now, it does reach a point where before the House and several weeks beforehand, we put things on what is called the consent calendar. And these motions or things like that are something that everyone really agrees with, and that there doesn't need to be a lot of debate about them. So we're saying we're just going to put them on this consent calendar. We'll put, whatever ones that we want on it, and we'll just vote on them to say yes or no. So it's just ones that, again, everyone's say, there's not a lot to talk about with this one, and they usually all pass. And there's usually something that's like just very, very simple on it. It just kind of speeds things up. Well, my motion was just a bit short of making it on there. It was just going to be on there, and then it got taken off at the last minute. It's like, okay, gosh. So it ended up going to the House of Delegates and being put in front of everyone for discussion. It ended up being the very last one heard, with about 30 minutes left on it. And this is the thing. If it doesn't get heard, it's gone right there. It's done. You don't bring it into the next year. It's done. So we were pushing and doing a lot of stuff trying to get it heard, and it did get heard. Now, the biggest thing that came discussion that was the pushback against it was the private practice section. And they were saying, how can we compete with hiring employees if we have to do that, if we have to put out, the wages? And so really their view of it was, we have to pay a lot of money to potential candidates, employee PTs or PTAs that can work for it. We're going to have to show that we pay more money for them to come work for us on that. And I completely understand. A small practice, you often can't pay as much as, a big, one of the big PT big PT clinics or a hospital system. You don't generate the revenue like they do that they can pay more. But I brought the point. It's not about just the pay on it, because it's just saying that that a PT can negotiate better. You don't have to necessarily pay more, because not everybody is looking for money on it. Some people are. Some people are going to say, you know what, I need a job that pays this amount of money because I got this much debt, or this amount I have to pay for X, Y, or Z. That's what I want. However, there could be other people saying, no, I want some of the other things. I want to be able to treat in my specialty. I want to be able to see people one-on-one. I want to be able to work right down the street, or I want to work these hours. There's different things why people would work. And then that's what I made sure I passed over. It's not showing just a dollar amount. It's just something to be put out there that support on it. And it passed. So it ended up passing like 76%. I was surprised that there was, again, the 20 some odd percent that did not support it. But it made it through. And so it is now it's a support statement of the APTA. So I just want to talk about the why on it. And this came about, a very interesting thing. Again, because of the discussion over the pay equality and the equity and inequality, and this going back and forth over that. And I completely understand that is a big debate, a big topic. We want to make sure that everyone is paid fairly for the work that they do. And there's not a real simple answer on it because, it's just evident that there's just there's different sides to it. And I know a few people who are better experts on that than I am. And I'm looking to talk to them down the line. I'm working on setting that up, and we'll have that discussion in the future. But to see, that is a big issue, trying to solve it. And looking at this, it's a small step. It's a step. Maybe not small, maybe not large, but it's a step. There, maybe I misspoke when I said small, but it's a step in that direction on it. And that's really what I was trying to do. There's this larger issue up here, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Sometimes there's a very, very large issue, in trying to tackle this huge, huge issue requires a lot. It's a lot of effort and time to be put forth in it, and you have to look at it from every angle. But you know what? Let's look at components, and if we tackle these components of it, it can help that overall thing. And that's really kind of why I brought it up. Now, I would say the benefits of pay transparency. I'll talk about that. The benefits, what I found out, is that it allows groups of people who have experienced inequities and inequalities in pay to have a better ability to negotiate. And it's shown, it was again coming from Europe, that these groups were able to be paid more in places where pay transparency was initiated, was put into place, that these groups are. It also helps with the negotiation, so that you're coming in, that hey, I am going to look at this, and this is how I can negotiate for this job. It also lets you know, hey, I don't want to apply for this job because that pay range is not what I'm wanting. So I'm not going to waste my time going for there. It actually does help employers. So this thing seems like it's very, very employee or candidate biased, I'm going to say. But it actually helps employers, is because the employees, they can get better quality employees. And that's what has come up for some of the research, is saying that we get better quality employees that apply for these jobs on it. Also, a better job satisfaction. They found that people hey, when you're getting the wage that you are wanting, and they found that people stay, and that they're more satisfied with their jobs. So really, really seeing that and going, wow, okay, this is something that was very beneficial. Now, I will say there is a drawback to it. There is a drawback. It did show in some of the research that higher performing employees often don't make as much money. And really can see about that, because, again, if you're posting the ranges, it's well, we can't go over that range. So it did hurt employees who were higher performers. So hey, I'm doing all this stuff to hit these metrics for a bigger bonus. It could ding them a little bit on it. And also sometimes it kind of handcuffs employers into saying, well, we have to pay within this range on it, because then they're going to have to redo the range. Now, some other criticisms of it, people were saying, well, what if employers could they just put whatever on there, and then they just, people are applying for these jobs and they're not getting it. Well, it's illegal because, again, these are laws that are put into effect, and if the employer is not abiding by those laws, that goes into to labor boards and things like that, to go hey, you're misleading. You're not actually paying those wages. Oh yes. And also another benefit. So again, internal employees, and I've known people that have done this, that they have going, hey, what's the pay range for this job? And found out they were being paid under the pay range, or they were at the bottom, had been in this employer for years, and they were at the bottom of the pay range, and they went, nope, we're going to renegotiate on that. So that's really kind of came up with it. I have seen that there was a letter written to the APTA, and they were criticizing some stuff, and they talked about, oh, you've focused on these things. Like the first or second one was pay transparency. I'm like, dang, this was to be helpful. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I said, hey, I would love to have found the people that wrote this thing and to say like, hey, would you want to talk about that? I'm very happy to talk about the why. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm talking about the why behind it, that overall did it as a step to help the profession. There is a larger issue. Many of the stuff that we complain about and that we talk about that we need to get done, it's a large issue. It's huge. It is enormous. And it's just like when you're trying to treat pain with people, it's multifactorial on it. If it's just one thing that fixes somebody, if it's just one thing that fixes somebody, we're just going to do that one thing. But we may often find that some of these issues are, again, multifactorial. There's other things that we all have to kind of put into effect, and stuff that's within our control or that's not within our control. Something that may have we can influence some, or we may not be able to influence. And, this is something that, again, it's very large. There's a lot that goes into it. And so if we look at doing, hey, there's a part. We do this part here. This is a step in a positive direction on there. So I would say, going forward, if you ever have questions or anything about that, if you're developing a motion, if you have an idea of saying, hey, I would like the APTA to do X, Y, or Z or something in the future, reach out to your delegation. They are usually listed on your state's website, and just to say, hey, this is something, could you work on? What are you doing about this? Because it may be your delegation, maybe another delegation, maybe it could be something. It can help. They're always looking for that stuff to help advance the profession, to help it be better for us to practice. So there you go. If you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button and let me know your beliefs and comment down below. Your beliefs, your thoughts, your opinions, and any of that. Let's talk about it. I'm happy to talk about why I did the motion. I hope I shared enough information about that. What are some stuff that we really need to work on? Yes, things about payment, getting better payment. That is the first and foremost thing that, yes, it is on every single one of ours mind. Everyone in the APTA, that was something I will again reiterate about the House of Delegates. In some of the breakout discussion, it was talked about 90% of the time. It is a large, that's a large monster. That is a large thing to take care of, and everybody has it on their mind, and they're working on it. But like I said, with pay, this was a step. Just trying to get a step in the positive direction on there. So, like I say, take care of yourself. Take care of your patients, and I will see you next time.